trust, strong relationships, and enduring landmarks. This is the Weigand South Bend Podcast. Through this podcast, we aim to delve deeper into our history, share inspiring stories, explore industry insights, and connect with our listeners. Get ready to join us as we uncover the past, present, and future of Weigand Construction in the vibrant Michiana region.
Aaron, Jonathan, let's talk a little bit about Weigand, the history, where the history's been with Weigand starting out in Fort Wayne and then how it came into South Bend.
One of the things that I like about Weigand is that they've been around for many, many years. Fourth generation family owned, care about people in that way. Coming to South Bend is a great fit. We've got what we believe is a great product, not only product at the end of the day, getting a great building built, but the product of our service. And so I'm excited about that in South Bend. And I think that ties in with our history and our legacy, just being so long-standing in 4 generations.
Yeah, and I mean, to add on that, right? So family-owned. There is a small group of shareholders that, Larry, under his ownership, was wise enough to look and see the longevity of the company and the growth of the company and see the value and the importance in extending some of that shareholdership to other individuals, all of which who are employees for the company. So I see that as being very important as well. But also with just the opening of our office, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that specifically, but just the extension of the product that was provided by the company in Fort Wayne, where we were founded and started, and then the extension of that and the consistency of that here in our South Bend office. So the success that was taken on there through service, people, and carrying that through to a satellite office and to continue to hit the ground running says a lot.
I think so, and one of the big things with that, and you'll hear Larry or anybody in the leadership talk about doing the right thing, right? How important that is. And in this industry, sometimes it's cliche because you always want to tell the client you're going to do the right thing, but I think whether it's in pre-construction or in operations, doing the right thing is so important to us, even when it means it might not be in the best interest of us, whether
Right.
it's financially or schedule, whatever that looks like. Doing the right thing continues then to build who we are as a company.
You know, how many times have we heard our leadership say, do what you say you're going to do, right? Mm-hmm. And anybody can get a building built, right? Not anybody, but most companies can get a building built. But is our owner satisfied through the process? Right. Are they loving the process? And that's one of the things that I really like about Weigand Construction is we care about people. We care about landmarks and impacting communities.
Right,
So,
right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about that in terms of the type of projects, the market specializations that you'll find us working in. Again, regionally, again, the 60-mile radius maybe here in the South Bend, what we call Michiana region. What type of projects, Aaron, would you typically see us on, or what are our specialties in terms of what value we can bring to a client?
Yeah. So construction manager as contractor is the big delivery method for us. So CMC delivery method, where we manage a project, and then we also have the opportunity to either bid on and competitively bid and potentially perform some of the work, or do it through negotiated terms with the client, depending on the project setup. That's the big delivery method. Most of the work that we've done here locally has been either healthcare, K-12, public CMC. So projects like the Mishawaka City Hall, Mishawaka Fire Station is another good example of a public CMC delivered project. But the K-12 resume between Concord Schools and Goshen Community Schools, Fairfield Schools, and also Wani School District and what we're doing there at Northwood.
And having said that, the CMC delivery method is really growing in popularity in Indiana. It was, 5 or 6 years ago that the state of Indiana allowed this delivery method to happen. And one of the tremendous advantages that I see in that method is that the contractor is able to get together with the owner and the architect during the design process. Okay. And, I mean, you can build a wonderful working relationship together, as well as spot and correct problems before they happen.
Right.
And that is just, in my opinion, that is key to creating satisfaction and a happy client, is being able to spot problems and correct them before they happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we talk about caring about people, right? I mean, that's another good example of, the approach is to work with the architect to resolve issues, be it through the design phase or the CA, the construction phase of a project. So in a lot of scenarios, depending on the owner's preference for involvement, if issues arise, if the owner prefers not to be involved in it, we may work those issues out with the architect and then present solutions to the owner as a unified team. But at the end of the day, it's what the owner desires, if they want to be a part of those detailed conversations or not. But ultimately, what we realize is that the success in the project, certainly relies in maintaining budget and maintaining schedule, but also how does the owner feel at the end of the day? Mm-hmm. Do they feel like my construction manager and my architect got along, it was an easy, smooth process? Or were they fighting the whole way along? And so this process really lends itself to working as a unified team with both the owner and the architect.
Another phrase that I speak about and that I hear talked about in design and budgeting meetings is, what's the best value for the client? And so we'll be talking together with an architect in design, and I just had a meeting this morning where we were talking about something that might be more costly or less costly, and at the end of the day we asked ourselves the question, what's the best value for the client? Meaning a long-term constructed building, or what's best for the community with which the building is being built, and that sort of thing. So I think that's a big, important aspect.
Yeah.
Well, both of you mentioned budget, and Jonathan, from your experience, obviously in the pre-construction world with the numbers where they are right now and some of the challenges that we're seeing in the industry, talk a little bit about that, some of the value that you just talked about that owners are seeing, understanding where their budget is way before the actual project starts.
Well, exactly, and so our goal at Weigand is that we're going to get a final bid scenario within a couple of percent of what we budgeted. And there's not very many companies out there that can say, look, we were within 1.5% of your budget when we put together the final bid numbers. And that's very important to Weigand. That's a reputation issue for us that we want to stand by. It's been a challenge in the last couple of years, what happened to our economy coming out of COVID, and we've all been paying more for milk and eggs. Well, construction is the same. We've been paying more for 2x4s and nails and screws and drywall. And it's been very hard to track. Weigand's pretty scientific about it. We track several construction indices monthly. And so we've been able to stay on top of it. But we've seen costs go up quite a bit.
Yep, absolutely. When we talk about trying to come into a new community, right? Again, Weigand has done projects in the past here, but not from the South Bend office location per se. But now coming into the community, as we look at competitors and what owners are looking at in us compared to some of our competitors here in the region, what sets Weigand apart? What makes us different that we can sort of, what you said earlier, we sort of, leadership stands behind who sort of our company is rooted on? You want to talk a little bit about that, Aaron? And I'm sure, Jonathan, you've got some things too.
I would say it's our people. So being very intentional and selective about the individuals that we hire. We do have what some might say is a pretty lengthy hiring process, but it's for a reason. We want to make sure that that individual is invested, and that we are also likewise invested into that individual, and that we feel like they align and we align ethically, even just and morally, with how we would conduct our business on a day-to-day basis. And so it's really our people. I could tell you that at the end of the day, a GC hard bid job would get built the same way from one contractor to another. But again, how did the owner, how did the architect, how did the vendors, how did everyone involved feel that they were treated throughout the process? Communication is a big thing. And so we pour a lot of energy and resources into training our individuals on how to communicate with others, how to do the technical skills, sure. But we put a lot of energy and resources into training our staff because they're our most important asset.
Just thinking about that, Aaron, you took the words out of my mouth when you said people is what sets us apart. And I agree with that. And for me, I've progressed to the point, at least in my own personal career, that I generally know how to build a building, right? And many of us do. And as you said, there's lots of people that can build you a building. My goal in my life is to impact my world. And so when you talk about a mission statement that says we build landmarks that impact the lives and communities that we serve, I'm about that. I'm about that bigger goal than just, hey, look at that brick that somebody put up with. What a great masonry joint that is. We want that. We want a great masonry joint, but we want to impact our world.
Well, you talk about a little bit the individuals, the people. And again, I will second what Jonathan said in terms of the people and how we go about what we do. I think one of the things too is the personal investment that the company puts back. Some of the training, right? I mean, being in operations, Aaron, you've probably heard it numerous times from the president down. We run to challenges, right? But before it gets to that point in the field where there is that big challenge, we can see it, and we can all admit we've been in the industry all many years. Construction's messy, and there's going to be challenges. Right. And it's our job, operations job, to run to it. You know, address it, get it in front of the owner and any other trades that might be involved before it gets to that bigger issue. Want to speak a little to that? Because again, it's not just us, it's any contractor, they're going to have those issues. Yeah. But how we address it and try to almost run to it ahead of time.
We could probably talk for hours on this and conflict resolution and things like that. But in terms of, dumping energy resources into our employees, I mean, we have a full-time employee that's dedicated to professional development for our staff. I mean, that's their full-time job, Samantha, and she does a great job of it. And so the company has put their money where the mouth is, investing in learning management systems and taking the time to map out training plans and paths for individuals and soliciting what it is those individuals do. So we might look at it and say, what can they do for us? Well, no, I mean, the employee has a say in their path. And so that's part of the process and how we map out training plans is at the end of the day, I think what do they say, happy cows make happy milk, right? So we don't want you doing something that you're not happy doing. So anyway, it's just the value, the reflective value that people have in valuing what it is they're doing on a day-to-day basis. The company sees that and they pour into that.
I talked a little bit about the importance of impacting our communities, and I think we have a care for each other when somebody's down, and then I've seen our office shut down and go and help out somebody in a community, and so I think those kinds of things are really important. And then on the training, things are tailored. It's not the easiest place to get hired into, and that's a good thing. And we can train people for skills, but we can't necessarily train them for the character qualities that they need to have to care for owners and run to problems.
Thought of another good point. I mean, with the energy that we have poured into this development, professional development, I mean, we do professional development sessions with the office staff, even with the superintendents and field staff. And so we do this, and what's important to understand is there's a purpose for that, okay? There's a culture of continued growth professionally. And so to some extent, there's an expectation there. And so, if I'm an individual with any kind of motivation, I would highly value that, which I do, right? Is the expectation is that we all as individuals are growing, and ultimately, right, it helps the company grow, but it benefits everyone. It benefits our community, benefits the company, and you as an individual in the growth of your career and where you want to take it.
Well, and just hearing you mention continuous improvement, which is one of our values as a company, and not only about growing our careers, but we want to be people who are able to go home every night, care for our families, right? And so if we train ourselves well, chances are we'll be able to do our jobs well, and chances are we'll be able to go home with a little bit less stress and have plenty of energy left to love and care for our families.
Let's talk a little bit about South Bend. You referenced it initially. Why South Bend? What sort of drew the company to South Bend, this market? What do you see in it?
I'm from the area, and I've got family here. I knew I wanted to raise a family in this area, and that's the plan, and that's why here. Now, as far as the company history, I know we had clients early on back in, was it 2000s? Yeah, early 2000s that came up here. Was our first project a Y? Was it the Y?
Niles Buchanan Y
Yeah.
was in 2006. In and around that time, we also built the Elkhart County Correctional Facility in Elkhart. So again, during those projects specifically, we were traveling from Fort Wayne with the manpower. And it got to the point, obviously, we've done work at Notre Dame and some other projects as well, that it made sense, again, finding local roots, right? We're not going to bring in implant people from Fort Wayne. We're going to find local personnel that live, go to church here. Their families are rooted here to really start this process.
As you were talking, I was thinking about another reason of why here is we feel like we've got a great product. And when I say great product, and we've said this before, it's not only the building, it's the way that we deliver the building. And so that's something that we want to share and grow and invest into more people so that more people can share a great product. So
Well, you mentioned something, Jonathan. I'm going to piggyback off it. The product, right? We've got something that's different. And a lot of that we talk internally all the time, it's relational. At the end of the day, again, so many people can build a building, right? But it's how we interact with our subs. It's how we interact with the owner. And our slogan on the back of our business card, what's it say? The first word is trust. And I remember Larry, the CEO, always talking about, if we don't have trust with the sub, with an owner, we won't go to phase 2, which is the well-built. Right? We want that product. You talked about the brick and the mortar and everything being quality, and that's our goal. But the first thing that starts is with trust. It's internal, but then external as well in terms of community leaders, business owners, of really building that. And so when you talk about something new that we're trying to bring, it's really down to the relational piece. What's next? You guys are sort of heading up pre-construction and operations. Where are we going? What's the goal here for South Bend, and what do we see in the next couple of years?
in terms of some challenges that we might see in the next couple of years is there's a lot of work that's coming out. And so one thing that we concentrate on is our relationships with our partners, being our subcontractors, our suppliers, others who are involved in helping to make a project a success. So when we're looking at battery plants and work at coming up at Notre Dame and other places, there's a fair amount of work there. So I feel like we've done a good job so far of building those relationships with our suppliers and vendors and such, but it's all that much more important in the coming years as we look to continue the great work that I believe we do.
To piggyback on the challenges, right, is doing your best to try to keep up with and plan. This is coming from an operational side, right? And plan resources. So as we look at a sizable backlog of work that's coming up, or even just work that's saturated in the market, we look at resources and say, what's the availability? And so we don't have a crystal ball, but we do our best to guess on timelines for a lot of these projects that we're aware of and allocate resources to it. And again, we talk about pouring into the relational side of things. The clients that we have and we've got long-standing relationships with, making sure that we're carving out and allocating resources for that and tracking that along the way, along with new work that we value highly that impact the community. So allocating resources for that and making sure that we can commit to getting that done. So that's not only from a field side, but also from the pre-construction side, making sure that we've got enough time to look at and budget these things as they come out. Because we know with the volatility of the market like it's been, that's as important as ever.
And I think too, the delivery method that we've talked about being primarily CMC, we do other delivery methods, but that's a primary one for us that's fit well. I think we feel like that is an area that is still somewhat in its infancy in Indiana. So excited to see that growing, and we're starting to see more and more cities and private individuals be interested in that delivery method and seeing its benefits. So I feel like as a company, we're poised well for that. And then, we've got work that we're talking about in Southwest Michigan and over to the east, different school districts, and some to the southeast and different areas. So we're excited about, what might be upcoming for us to be able to build and invest in communities. Mike, thanks for inviting Aaron and I to join us in this podcast, and thank you all for joining us as we are able to share a little bit about what Weigand is all about.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to listen. Mike, thanks for doing this. Appreciate taking the time. We're excited to continue to invest in the community where we all live and work every day, where our families go to church and go to school. We're excited to be able to pour in.
And as always, when you think of Weigand, remember you're choosing trust well built.